So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to 30 Minutes of a Scary Story. We're going to talk about trends, tools, and transformation. That was the title, but actually, I'm going to tell you why the workplace transformation is your number one business problem. Now, you might know that in 2005, the co-working movement actually started in San Francisco with companies like WeWork, co-workspace, office group, and they really showed us, the best practices of these new working environment. And it's really, a lot of companies want to benefit from these best practices. Now, let's take it a bit into history. Anyone know where the word office came from? Officium, which is Latin. And it used to be not a place where you would go to, but it was a person or a function. And since then, we saw the movement in which it became more and more a physical place. So let me give you an example, which is on the left, which is the St. Augustine in his office, which was about 1500. So there we see the first things happen of people actually being in a physical place. But it was one person, it was his place. And throughout the other centuries, so into the 17th century, we saw new, more bureaucratic organizations arise. So actually the first purpose-built office was in London for the East Indian Company around 1729. Now, since then, a lot has changed. And I want to share with you a picture of what I think was the tipping point of a modern office. And that's this. Believe it or not, this was built, designed in 1939. By Frank Lloyd Wright, and this was the headquarters of Johnson Wax. So this was actually the first time that you saw open space offices, thin columns, beautiful desk, filing cabinets. And you know what the good thing was? It was cheaper per square feet because there were a lot of people in there. It looked luxurious, but it was a good pricing in it. So filing cabinets, and on the first floor, there were like meeting rooms and special places for the management. So there was really good. But obviously, Second World War came, people tried to copy this idea, and something happened in the 60s and 70s, and I see some people here that are from the previous century. And what did we find? The cubicle! So everybody knows this, great for location because you were literally cramped into a place, but not so good for interaction and not so good for concentration. So within these new organizations, you need to collaborate. Well, you could stand up and peek over the cubicle and say to the guy next to you, hey, how are you doing? So we saw also some movements in getting some new technology coming in. And well, one of the guys that were really into new technology and actually new media was this guy. Anyone know who this is? Hugh Hefner in his Chicago apartment in the 1960s. So this is like the new way of working. He had what he called his office bed there. So we see new technology coming in, phones, television, the like. So he did this for business meetings, discussions, so-called creative sessions as well. So we really saw around the 60s and 70s, new movements coming up. Now, what we were seeing is that in the 70s and 80s, the amount of office space dramatically increased. But at the same time, with all of the new innovations and people doing co-working and being outside, actually the usage of the workplace significantly reduced. So about 50% of the office space was idle at any time. Now last year, a car manufacturer approached us. And these guys have 71,000 meeting rooms. Can you imagine that? 71,000 meeting rooms. And each of these meeting rooms are approximately something around 300 square feet. Now, if you imagine that a square feet of office space is about 57.4 US dollars, you think like, oh shoot. So if I calculate that and about 50% is idle at any time, you're talking about $611 million of empty space that you do not use. Now you have to produce a lot of cars for that, to get that margin. Now you could argue that you say, well, it's on top of the top 3 car manufacturers that you guys speak to, but we're 1,000 times smaller. Now imagine that you then still lose around $600,000. Now, co-working spaces, one of the reasons that co-working spaces are so popular is because of supposedly the interaction, the creativity, we are together. But who works in an open office space here? Sometimes I do, yeah, anyone? And well, some people have different ideas about that it's very creative or that it's very collaborative. They sometimes have the idea like, this is my idea of the open office floor. Now, Harvard Research did a research on open office spaces. So they took traditional offices and looked at the interaction that people had 15 days before they switched. Typically it was 5.8 hours per day. And afterwards, in an open space, it was back to 1.7. Now you could argue that that was chit-chat and that it was really necessary. But what turned out is that in these open office spaces, people get interrupted about 8 times per day. And you need about, let's say, about 20 minutes to get back to your normal routine again. Now, if you would calculate that, you would go into around 13 hours, something like that, per week. Now, multiply that by 50 weeks, you get about 650 hours per year, which is on an average about $30,000 per employee because of the disturbance that you get. So, that's a cost. Let me share with you the hunt that I'm out for a meeting room. All of us work here in offices and office spaces, and in general, a person has like about 15 minutes a day looking for this meeting room. Is it available? Can I get in there? People sitting there trying not to look outside because they didn't book it, but they said they did. So that costs a lot of time as well. So on a weekly basis, that's around an hour, 50 minutes. On a year, that's about 62 hours. Now, if you calculate that, it's about, for a company of about 100 people, it's about, $300,000 spent on searching for a meeting place. Now, what showed up is that about 70% of the people think that meetings are not very productive because they're not well prepared, people don't show up, they're not in time. So the lack of finding that meeting space and the issue that you don't find a space is an annoyment. The one that's on the rise as well is the absence of good technology. Now, another research has showed the idea of desk sharing. A survey showed out that top of the 500 enterprises are willing to adopt some form of desk sharing by 2020. Now, a typical office space is around 135 square foot. Okay, so that's a bit of the average. Now again, take this idea of this 57.4 US dollars per square foot and give the idea that about 50% of this office space, again, is vacant at any time. So in a company of 100 people, you would lose like about $387,000 per year. Now, if we take a look at what innovative companies are doing, they're changing the ratio not on the 1-to-1, but typically in the 2.3-to-1. And we see two versions of desk sharing. One is the hot desking. So typically you need a free space to work. And the other one is much more the activity-based workplace. So either be the creativity room or be the video conference room that you see. I mean, there are loads obviously out of here on video conferencing and displays. So you need a specific room with specific appliances that you will not find at home. Now, I've talked a lot about meetings, about offices actually. And I was thinking about what are the ingredients for a good meeting? Well, one is obviously meeting good people. You know, if there's a dull person in front of you, you think like, oh gosh, you think about the garden that you have to fix, the groceries that you have to do, and so forth. So it's about an interesting person with you. It's about good food as well. It's even sometimes about pets. You know, with us in the office at Joan, we have like people taking their dogs to the office. And I was thinking like, okay, what was the picture of the first meeting? And I came up with something like this. So, you know, it looks a bit like, you know, that should be the first meeting. Now, so what we see is the necessity for simple coordination to know where you could sit, have a good analysis on what places are available and how they are used. You would like to remove disruption, that you're working on a space and somebody is, you know, nagging on your head that he wants to talk to you. And we would like to improve the efficiency. Now, there are some simple, elegant, and extremely efficient, power efficient possibilities in there available at the moment. So let me give you a bit of ideas on how we could tackle those. Now, what you would typically like to have is when you're out on that environment and you would like to be in an open office space, you would like to know what the status of a person is. So here you have an example of Rodney, for example, who is free. Or you have Jamie, who is now busy. So that gives you an idea in an open office space, hey, who can I talk to at this given moment in time? So this is really a lean and mean way of showing this. So that could be placed at any corner within an office space. And here's an example of how you could do it as well. Now, let's have a look at the meeting room. What we see here is a device that helps you to book your meeting rooms. It's you can go to the door and book it there, or you could do it out of your company calendar, or you could even do it on your smartphone. The fact is that it's completely wireless. With a magnetic mount, you can put it on the glass. It integrates with Outlook, Office 365, iCal, G Suite, any corporate calendar that you might have. And the good thing is, because it's making use of e-paper, it's about 99% more energy efficient than LCD and LED. So a really elegant way to see, you know, is this booked? Can I book it? When can I use it? So this is an example. So typically, what you would see is, you know, connecting to doors like this, to the glass panels. So really handy to have. Now, we talked about the hot desking, and here's an example of what you see, a desk, an available desk space of a person. He goes there, sees if he's free, can also see how long a person will be sitting there. You don't have to ask, are you camping here for the whole night, or when are you going? Now, and this gives you a bit of an idea, especially also, you know, with functions like, for example, the QR code that you could need. Now, increasingly, we also see combinations. I mean, walking around here today, it's crowded, and sometimes you think, like, wouldn't it be nice if I could get into kind of an office caravan? I think some of you guys have seen this as well. Excellent opportunities, you know, in open spaces like this to really sit down, have a talk. But again, you don't want people to camp there, so you want to make sure that these can be booked as well. So, summarizing, what you're looking for is, you know, to help you reduce and eliminate, for example, the interruptions that you have on your workplace. You want to make sure that your meeting room usage increases. And you would like to have a platform and also a signage that helps you to stimulate you and helps you to provide desk sharing within your company. So I kindly invite you to visit any of these 3 locations and have a look at it yourself. And if you want to share any of your office horror or dreams or questions now, then I'm happy to answer any questions. And otherwise, I thank you for your attention and wish you a nice day here in Amsterdam.